Going live. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Pro Lacrosse Talk Live. We're doing another live draft show. This time you can watch the draft on NBC Sportsnet, but we'll be, your companion, I guess, while we watch the draft as well. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And I'm joined by Adam Moore and Dan Arestia. First off, guys, welcome to the show. And how excited are you guys for this draft?
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. Really, really excited to see where these squads go with this. This draft looks a lot different now than I think we were expecting it to a few months ago, before the season started and before all the craziness with the Corona outbreak. So there's a lot of players that won't be in this draft that we were expecting to be here, but there's still an awesome dearth of talent to be picked from, and I'm excited to see where these squads go.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of big names. I was looking at Paul Carcaterra's big board from January 31st, and there's a lot of names on there that, probably aren't going to be on this draft today in terms of Michael Sowers, Dox Aiken. We don't know what Jeff Teat's situation is. A lot of names that, we expected to hear earlier this year that aren't going to be called today. And there might be a few surprises as well. But we do have a pretty solid list. Good idea. We all think Grant Ament is going number one. I think that tends to be the general consensus. But Dan, talk to me a little bit about some of these other guys and where you think they might end up. Looks like Dan might be a little frozen right now.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yep, you're good now.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to say, where some of these guys are going to go because, like Adam had just said, there's sort of so much that's unexpected about this draft. You look particularly in the midfield group. Adam had mentioned Dox Aiken isn't going to be big guys that we thought we were going to have right there. So, we have still a really great midi and Brian Costabile, but the midfield group just got that much sort of smaller and many, just middies in the group anymore. So, other guys you see that maybe you didn't see a month ago is a guy like Peyton Smith, whose stock seems to have gone through the roof in the last few weeks. A lot of the real, force of nature type, as Devin calls them, face-off guys like TD Erlin, like Kyle Gallagher, Gerard Arceri, these guys are all doing another year of school. And so a guy like Peyton Smith, who is very, very good, is absolutely a PLL face-off man. You just might not have seen him on a big board a month ago, but now there he is. And, he might not make it out of the first round. So,
You're freezing up a little bit on a stand. Just
sometimes maybe for a team like the Redwoods that's looking for some face-off depth, I think it becomes challenging too because you have to remember sort of the format that we're drafting for. We have a championship series that's going to have just to it. You're going to have these 20 games in 2 weeks. You need to have depth. You need to have guys. You can't go down there with a roster of guys and think some of them won't be playing meaningful minutes. So you're going to be able to sort of, go out with the same 18, 20 guys every game out. It's not going to work that way. You need to have depth at these positions. So teams where they feel good want to get deeper at those spots. Teams where they feel like they have a need definitely want to take a guy who they think can help them right away. So, I know there's probably going to be a couple of stash picks in here for some of the deeper teams like the Woods, like the Whip Snakes, who are probably still feeling good where they are, given moves they've already made. But there's going to be guys taken who you're going to see make the trip to the championship series and play meaningful time.
No, absolutely. And Dan, just so you know, you are breaking up a little bit on us. Just you're freezing a little bit. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I don't know if that's internet or not, but no, that's me with the call, so we're good. But I just want to give you a heads up on that. But I agree 100%. There's Peyton Smith is a guy who we expect to go in this draft, and we had Isaac Berkey talk to his coach just about his elite hand speed. He's not the biggest guy, but he's really quick off the draw. Played all 4 years at Marist. And a lot. He's being linked to teams like the Redwoods, like the Water Dogs, who do have face-off options. Drew Simoneau and Greg Pasculjan. But they're maybe looking to add a little bit of face-off depth, and I think those would be some good landing spots.
Yeah, and another just interesting point before this draft ends up getting started is there's players that have already been drafted in professional lacrosse over the last few weeks, and we project there might be 6 to 8 players in this draft potentially that were picked by MLL squads and haven't signed contracts with Major League Lacrosse yet. So we expect a lot of those guys, if they are drafted tonight, to go the PLL route. But it'll be interesting to see where some of those guys that have already been taken might go.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just 5 minutes away from draft time, looks like.
Yeah, and I think we can just pencil Grant Ament in with that first overall pick. I think it's been said enough. It was said by Tom Shriver on our show on Saturday. He looks forward to playing with a guy like Grant, and he ended up saying Grant's name during our first Pro Lacrosse weekly show. So I definitely can see him going first overall, and he'll be a great addition to that already stacked Archers offense.
Yeah, no, and then it kind of gets a little bit more interesting after that with who ends up being number 2. I know we all think Brian Costabile would be a great fit for the Atlas. There's been talks that, maybe the Redwoods try to trade up and get him. I don't know if they, trade with the Atlas or trade with another team. But do you think he makes it past number 2? I mean, maybe the Atlas take a guy like Michael Kraus? Maybe they go on the defensive side. What are your guys' thoughts?
Go ahead, Dan.
I think there's a couple ways that could happen. I mean, first of all, I know Grant Ament to the Archers seems like book it, but just like there's a non-zero chance the Archers take Brian Costabile. I'm just going to put it out in the air. They lost some really athletic middies to the Water Dogs. It's a spot where everybody always wants to be deeper with a midi like that. It's defensible for them to take him first overall. It really is. They really need a guy like Grant Ament, but I'm just gonna leave the possibility out there.
Absolutely.
I don't think Costabile makes it past 2 overall. Again, because he's the kind of guy that year 1 of this league showed us. You need as many guys like this as you can get. So a 2-way midi with range, who can dodge, who's athletic, who's gonna hit twos for you, who can play wings. A guy like that is gonna, he's got a spot on every team in the league. After that, yeah, I think it does get a little murky. It's tough to figure out exactly where guys go, based on personnel and based on who's available, based on maybe trades we see. It's not outlandish. There's been a lot of it teased sort of by PLL, by coaches and stuff like that maybe they'll trade back, maybe they'll make moves. The Atlas could even trade back if they really wanted to. There's going to be a lot of teams that want a guy like Brian Costabile. So, if they're offered the right package, whether this year or with players that can play now or future draft picks, maybe they'd consider moving back out of that spot. So, there's just so much unknown around this draft, and some of it's due to COVID, some of it's due to the format that we're going to be playing. It's really hard to try and figure out.
No, for sure. And, we were kind of just talking amongst ourselves. There's a good group of like 10 guys that we think are going to get drafted tonight. And then after that, there's just a lot of unknowns. Not that there's not enough great players, but more, we don't know what their situation is. I think one of the guys is like that is Jeff Teat. We don't know his situation at Cornell. Haven't really heard if he's coming back, if he's transferring. Gonna go pro. He might go number 1 over on the NLL draft as well. So, very interesting.
Yeah, there's other guys in that Cornell group too. We saw a guy like Connor Fletcher get drafted in the MLL draft a few nights ago, and he's an outstanding midfield player who's got the skill set and the athleticism to play in the PLL. Where is he going back to school somewhere? How is the whole Cornell thing going to shake out? There's the added element there where Cornell's got a new coaching staff with a PLL player as the head coach at Cornell right now. The guys want to follow Pete Milliman to Hopkins. There's a whole other level of uncertainty when it comes particularly to Cornell guys and guys like Jeff Teat.
Absolutely. And we are, 2 minutes away. We'll get the draft up on our TVs as well. What do you guys think? Where do you think a guy like Michael Krause ends up? I mean, he is definitely one of the top offensive players in this draft, but we could see him falling maybe low as 5, 6, 7. We're taking, I think 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think the whole first round is in play for Michael Krause. I don't think he's going to go first overall, but I think after that, any spot from 2 to 7 is a spot you could see him play. I think Kark in his analysis and his pod nailed it in calling Krause a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
In his time at UVA, you saw offenses where he was the star and the alpha. You saw offenses where he wasn't. You saw him as a distributor. You saw him as a dodger and a scorer. He can do all of those things at an elite level, and because he sort of has that skill set, that means that he can play for just about anybody. So even on teams where they already have a good lefty in place who does one of those things well,
Mm-hmm.
they could still use a guy like Michael Krause who can change his game to do something different for them.
No, absolutely. All right, I'm getting the draft up on my screen. All right, we got about a minute left, guys. So what are your guys' predictions? Let's hear it. You got Grant Ament number 1 for me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think where there's smoke, there's fire. We've heard enough connections to the Archers where I can completely see it being Dan's case with Costabile going 1, but I think it's Grant.
Yeah, I think it probably starts with Grant, number 1. Yeah, I know we're all looking at the countdown like it's the Red Zone channel on
Yep.
Sundays for the games to start. Yeah, I think it's, the way my mock draft went, I had Ament 1, I had Costabile 2. And then after that, the third pick with that water dog spot is an interesting one because you've seen the way sort of Coach Copeland has built his team to this point. It's a lot of those guys who are really versatile, who can play a lot of different spots.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see sort of if he tries to go that way or if he tries to find that true down low, anchor your defense defenseman to play with Brody Merrill and then all those other guys who are kind of LSM close defenseman tweeners that can do both. Does he go that way? Does he go to his offensive end to find more, versatile kind of players? Like, is that a spot for Michael Krause since he can do all those things well?
Mm-hmm.
Coach Copeland's in an interesting spot there at the third pick.
No, absolutely. And, the squad that he's put together, I think they can compete in this championship series. Day one, it would be nice to have a little bit of, time to gel, but, they put together a scary squad in that expansion draft.
And speaking of the water dogs, about the goalie and we have a couple of goalies on our big board. A guy like Matt DeLuca could potentially go to a team like the Water Dogs or the Chrome potentially. We talked on our show on Saturday how a lot of teams are pretty set at the keeper position, whether it's their starter and backup or their starter. So it'll be interesting to see where the first goalie goes in this one, if there is one taken.
Absolutely. And he is the only goalie that's said that he's not returning. There's a lot of other top goaltenders that have either decided to return to college next year or that we just still don't know about.
Yeah, we've seen a guy like Drake Porter, who might have been the top goalie in this class, had said he's going back to Syracuse for another year, so he won't be taken. But I would agree with Adam in that of all the positions in this league, goalie is probably the hardest one right now to crack a game day roster at.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's backup in the PLL is world class good. So getting drafted at goalie, it means you're going to have to really work to try to earn that spot. And for the Water Dogs, they got Cipriano in the expansion draft, which is a guy Copeland wanted, and then they signed Tate Boyce, who came over from the Cannons of the MLL, not long after that. And then maybe this is I think I had something like this in my mock draft is you bring in a guy like DeLuca after that and just have competition for that goalie spot for which of those 3 guys, which 2 are going to be the ones you bring to games and let them play for it every week out. Now every day out come series time.
No, yeah, for sure. So we got Paul Burmeister on there right now. If you guys are tuning in, he's talking with Ryan Boyle. Looks like they're talking about Grant Ament. Let's talk a little bit about the defensive side, in this draft. I mean, there's a lot of guys, that, Nick Mellon tends to be the name that is discussed a lot. I think of Tom Rigney, though, who went number 5 overall in that MLL draft, is a guy, that would fit in a lot of these teams. We saw the Chaos took a fellow West Point grad in Johnny Surdick last year. They also have Matt Reese and Grayson Terrain on that roster as well. You think they maybe take Rigney at 5, kind of fortify that defense a little bit?
If Rigney makes it to 5, that could be an interesting pick for them. And Rigney is a guy, I was saying a second ago with the Water Dogs looking maybe for that true down low, stay at home defenseman. That's really Tom Rigney for them. So maybe they feel good about him in that spot too. Looking for a guy like that as opposed to the up and down kind of player that you might see at the rest of their pool spots. But yeah, we also saw Mark Ivanchek make the decision to play in the MLL, and he was a pull who probably would have been on a lot of PLL draft boards and been highly rated. So teams are going to have to look past him. Maybe teams dip into Yale's Aiden Hines, who's an athletic guy who can play all the spots, and the pro coaches love those defensemen out of places like Yale because they're going to be pro ready most of the time. They're not going to need a whole lot of adjustment time. These are guys who are athletic and smart and can fit themselves into defenses. So maybe you see a guy like Aiden Hines go in this draft, but the pole spot certainly is an interesting one.
No, yeah, for sure. And then you got a LSM like Reese Eddy, who just is all over the field. He's a transition threat as well. He kind of could replace Brian Karalunas for the Redwoods if they decide to go that route. I think he would fit on really any team, but Chaos too. If they want to take a look at him, he can maybe become a new member of that bomb squad. Just a lot of different types of talent in this draft. It's not all black and white. We mentioned Nick Mellon. He could also play LSM or play down close. Top cover guy at Syracuse. A lot of people think he's going to go first round. Just very, very interesting, diverse group of polls in this draft for sure.
And, going back to the offensive side of the ball, I'm really excited to see where another one of Aiden Hines' teammates, Matt Gaudette, goes. I think he's such a versatile guy on the offensive side of the ball. He really, really runs the show on the offensive side, and he could fit into a lot of different offenses currently. And I know, Dan, you had mocked him at number 4 to the Chrome. You want to talk a little bit about what made you think he'd be the best fit there?
Yeah, a guy like Gaudette, you look at him and he looks I think it makes sense to sort of look at the attack lines across the PLL, and you see a lot of attackmen who do dodging and are ball dominant players, and not as many guys who have a skill set like Gaudette's, which is a pure off-ball scorer and maybe as good of one as there's going to be in this draft this year. He can score from inside. He can punish you from 10, 12 yards from range if you don't respect him. So I think he's a guy where when you look at the Chrome, you have Jordan Wolf, you have Justin Gutterding. In the midfield, you have Ned Crotty, you have John Ranigan. You have these ball-dominant Dodgers who are going to be, really strong assist men. And if you have a guy like Gaudette to play off of that, it's exactly what fits in well for them. I think the Whip Snakes are sort of the same way. There's guys there who are going to want the ball, who are going to want to get their dodges, and Gaudette fits their off-ball scheme really, really well as somebody who can play off of those guys.
Absolutely, and he's very Westberg-esque, that type of crease attackman, but like you said, that can score from range as well. I don't think he makes it 2-6, but it wouldn't be interesting if the Redwoods kind of shock us all and take a guy like Gaudette to kind of replace that presence that they lost in Berg. Again, I don't think he makes it to 6. I think he definitely will go in that top 5 because I see the chaos. A guy like Andy Towers loves his Canadians, maybe picking him up if he does make it past the Chrome or Water Dogs. But, definitely interesting, spot where he could land. Like you said, there's a lot of teams that could use his type of skill set. Looks like they're interviewing Coach Bates right now. So
speaking of those coaches, it looked like Coach Copeland had a pretty similar background to you, Dan. In his, we'll look forward to having some of the coaches on at the end of the draft. So stick around for a little bit afterwards. Don't sign off. Just when that last pick at number 14 comes in, we will have some post-draft coverage for a little bit as well. So I want to make sure we got that out there.
And it looks
Yeah,
like
public.
Grant Amon is now number 1, and he is an archer. So to no shock to anybody, Grant Amon goes number 1 to the Archers Lacrosse Club.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where it's just don't complicate it. Don't overthink it. He's the guy for the spot, right? He's got the skill set that perfectly aligns with what the Archers need right now. They need that distributor, that pass first attackman to play, behind the goal. Amon is the best at that in this draft by far. He can dodge for himself to free his hands. You saw Joe Keegan share a lot of clips of him using two-man game at and below the goal line to give him space so he can see the defense, and feed from back there. He's got two of the best shooters in the league as his line mates at attack now, and Will Manny and Marcus Holman, which makes this, a no-brainer. And then you can make the case that, the two best passers in the league both play for the Archers now.
Yep.
Keegan said the two best passers in the world, which is lofty. I think maybe let's watch Grant Amon play some games in the PLL first. He is an incredibly good passer, and this team is going to be able to carve you up quickly if you're not organized off the ball on defense against the Archers.
No, I agree. I was going to mention that about what Joe Keegan said, because I remember him saying number 2 passer in the world, and someone asked who number 1 was, and he just sent a GIF of Captain America. So
yeah.
There's your answer there with Schreiber and Amon. But yeah, we're definitely excited to see him. Feeding those guys. Like you mentioned, Marcus Holman, Will Manny. He could even feed guys at the midfield as well. I still think they need to replace, losing a Danny Ipe. I think kind of hurt them as well as Ben McIntosh. So I think they need to address midfield maybe in the second round. But Amon, I think, was the sure pick, and excited to see him in an Archer's uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think good at passing is an understatement. Holds the record for most assists in a season, right, at 96, and broke the Big Ten and school record for assists in a career. Fantastic addition for sure.
They're talking to Grant right now. We're actually going to have Grant on our podcast coming up. He's going to talk to us, and we had him on Instagram Live a few weeks ago, but we're hoping to hear more from his story and what his decision was to go to Penn State and now to go pro, and we're looking forward to seeing him in that Archer's uniform. Now that the Atlas are on the clock, where do you think they go?
I still think the move here is, in a lot of these spots, to be honest, is draft best available player. And for me right now, that's Costabile. The Atlas they made the trade for Omar Dennis, and they have some strong midfield players already. But again, the PLL demonstrated that if you can play the game without subbing your midfielders all the time as you go from end to end, then you can create early offense, you can find transition opportunities, and you can punish teams who don't have the personnel that you have. If they have to be changing guys and stuff to get themselves ready to play, then you can punish teams. You could say that the two best rosters in the league of those type of middies are on the two teams that played for the title. On the Redwoods and the Whipsnakes have as many of those guys as anybody. So, I think that's the way you would want to see the Atlas go here is grab a middy like Costabile to kind of build that midfield a little bit. Only also because, I think they probably feel pretty good with where they're at of the attack. They have an outstanding attack now because Rob Pennell, Eric Law, Ryan Brown, James Pennell, Chris Kluche, like this attack is loaded. The defense just added Craig Chick, so they'll be able to get, a tick up in the cause turnover department, hopefully. Midfield, I think, is just the spot that makes the most sense for them as it is anyway.
No, I agree. I think, midfield is their biggest need still. Like, you said they lost to Ryan Conrad to the expansion draft. He kind of fits that role. He's Costabile's a 2-point threat too, as anyone's seen. I do think maybe they want to add another pole, maybe in that second round. But I don't think you reach, this early. I think, number 2, you take the best player available, and I think right now that's Costabile. But we'll see, who they end up taking, and we're going to talk to Ben Rubio after this draft as well, kind of get his thoughts.
And Dan, I had Grant Amon written in at number 1, and you tempted me, and so I deleted that name from my first. And I have Costabile in there. I think I'm going to keep it for now, but you tempted me too. We talked a little bit ago about the versatility of a guy like Michael Krause, and it's never bad to have versatility like that on the squad. So while they're stacked at that position, he can be used in a lot of different ways.
No, for sure. And where do you think the Water Dogs go at number 3?
I guess it kind of depends on what we see the Atlas do here. If they have yet to announce that they've traded out, if they decide to go with that poll that Hutton was mentioning instead, if some set of circumstances were to happen where they don't take Costabile, then I think, given the way Copeland has been putting his team together, they are absolutely taking Costabile at 3.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that,
sure.
I think Michael Krause makes sense there. I sort of mock drafted Nick Mellon there because I see him as that versatile Swiss Army knife type guy for the defensive end for them. I know I've said they sort of need that stay-at-home pole too, but I think Mellon is good enough that he's a guy that might make sense for them. It's really tough to say which end of the field they're going to try and continue to build here because they still kind of have work to do, I think, to build their roster a little bit.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Yeah, no, I don't think I know some people are thinking they take Peyton Smith at 3. I still don't think they go that route. I think they have Semino. I think people are overlooking him a lot just because he proved that he could be a starter in this league. Connor Farrell just happened to, kind of beat him out in more minutes down the road, but I think they're pretty set at face-off. Now maybe they add a face-off guy like Peyton Smith in the second round if he's still available, but I don't think they reach and take him at 3. So we're in a commercial break right now. They got Grant Ament on there talking, and then it looks like we'll get Ben Rubior's pick coming up at 2 when this commercial break is over. A lot of time already. 15 minutes past. I'm guessing they're gonna kind of breeze past these other picks. I don't think they'll take 15 minutes for each pick. You gotta give Grant Ament some time as the number 1 pick, and we're excited for him. I know I talked to him too. He's excited just to kind of find out where he's going to end up. He's got a lot of mentors, including Rob Pennell in the league. And he talked about just so many guys that he'd love to play with or play against. Chris Sabia was one, his teammate at Penn State, that he's looking forward to now, that he knows suiting up against. When I talked to him, he obviously didn't know where he was going, but I think that's kind of the exciting thing too is, a lot of people, maybe not follow pro lacrosse as much as we do, but it's really, I think becoming the next level. And I think you're going to see a lot more people take it seriously going forward. Not that people in the past didn't, but, you saw different scenarios where top picks just decided not to play because they had, full-time jobs. I think, as the PLL is kind of doing, we're really starting to see more full-time lacrosse players. And I'm really excited to watch the NBC coverage of the championship series this summer in the Olympic window. I think it's a huge opportunity for the sport. I don't know if you guys want to give your thoughts on that, being in that Olympic window, being exposed to, 13 different countries other than the U.S. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, they get the Olympic window, like you just said, which is great. You're filling some just spectacular time slots on NBC, a few games on Network NBC. You get some on NBC SN. You get all of them on Gold. So you can see every game, which is great. And at those times this summer, if lacrosse is still the only game going, other sports leagues, it looks like are trying to, kind of figure out their way back now. Baseball, basketball, we'll see sort of where they are in late July, and sort of what competition for eyes the PLL is going to have. But I think you combine that and the way that can generate new fans with the way, if the betting and the gambling that the PLL announced this week is in place and is something that they have ready in some way, shape, or form, who knows how much, in time for this summer. That's a whole other demographic and a whole other set of eyeballs that'll be drawn to the game. So, the PLL is doing a lot, I think, to position themselves to come out of what is, a really not the summer that you would want to have, positioning themselves for a really explosive summer in 2021.
No, I agree. And as you were talking, we have Brian Costabile has been selected by the Atlas. So again, pretty obvious pick there. What are you guys' thoughts on, Costabiel's game? We kind of talked about it a little bit, but, how do you think he fits in with the Bulls?
I think, like we just had mentioned, perfect transition option for that squad. With the shortened season, he's going to have fresh legs. Youngster's going to be able to get in there and make an instant contribution for that squad. And we did have a third pick. There was a little bit of time in between, but that quickly, the Water Dogs went with Michael Kraus out of UVA attackman at number 3.
Yeah, there we go. Michael Kraus. We heard like you said, Dan. He's a chameleon. That's I think Clark's words there that he can kind of fit in all different spots, and this fits Copeland's style perfectly. He's got a lot of different assets on this attack now with Drenner, with McCardle, with Cuccinello, and now you add a guy like Kraus, and this team's going to be scary.
Yeah, Kraus is the only one of 4 guys in UVA's history, and when you consider how many ridiculously good lacrosse players have been to UVA, it makes this even more of an impressive stat. He's one of 4 guys to play there who have both 100 goals and 100 assists. He's obviously strong lefty dodger and shooter, and the attack group that's already there at the Water Dogs is really good, and there are very good lefties there like Ben Reeves. But as we've said, Kraus can adjust so that he is going to be productive and he's going to be impactful, whether he's the alpha, whether he's playing off the ball, whether you need him to dodge, whether you need him to feed, whatever it is, he can adapt and do it. And, that's why I think that's when you think about the way Coach Copeland's built his team, that's something that he's going to want, in as many spots as he can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have another pick in. Tom Rigney has been selected by the Chrome. So he goes a little higher than we expected, but rightly so. He is a big-bodied defenseman, was captain at Army West Point his senior season. And Sudan adds another defensive piece. They have a lot of poles now on this roster that they can plug in place. So what are you guys' thoughts on Rigney, the big rig?
Yeah, I like Rigney as a player. I like him a lot. I honestly think this isn't him going all that early. Teams do still need these guys like Rigney who are the big bodied, again, 6'3", 225.
Yeah, stay at home defenseman.
Captain in Army, stay at home guy. He's not gonna wow you in transition and hit a bunch of twos and all that stuff, but his positioning, his footwork are outstanding. He's ridiculously strong. He's got a great knack for ground balls. This is the kind of guy that every team needs to have on their defense, that anchor of the defense. And the Chrome did lose some quality players in the expansion draft and everything to the Water Dogs, and a guy like Chris Sabia going. So this is a good step to rebuilding that end of the field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this honestly doesn't surprise me too much either. When I spoke with Coach a little bit earlier in the offseason, like you had mentioned, Dan, it was a big loss to lose a guy like Chris Sabia, and he really was looking at the defensive side of the ball when I spoke with him. So great pickup for that squad.
Yeah, no, and now we got the chaos on the clock. I really think they go with Nick Mellon here. That's just my personal opinion. I think he kind of fits their style. He can push, or I'm sorry, he can't. He's not really more of a transition guy, but he probably can push in transition. But he's a top cover guy. They kind of need to replenish that a little bit. After losing Brody Merrill, they could go with a Reese Eddy as well, but I definitely think they stay on the defensive side. I don't know. Do you guys have different thoughts? Do you think maybe they take Gaudette?
I think I could see Gaudette here. The only reason maybe you hesitate a little on Gaudette is because it's easy to forget that Curtis Dixon is going to be with this team this summer. He's going to be, whether he plays or not, but he wasn't available last summer. And this team has a lot of guys at attack and a lot of guys to get through those spots. So they might be so backed up at attack that they think they have to pass on an attackman here. But, if they do think that they want that off-ball scorer, that off-ball specialist to kind of give some balance to a guy like Connor Fields, then Gaudette makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because I think he would fit in really, really well, but they are just so loaded on attack. And I know Andy Towers, he really wants guys that he can, put on the roster. Obviously, that's tough to do with this much talent, but it is interesting to see, does he go maybe a best player available approach, or does he, maybe take needs based? But I'm expecting a defensive pick if I had to bet. If I had to make a PLL bet now, that's what I would do. Now we're at a commercial break, though. I think that's kind of a good time to talk about the PLL introducing betting. I mean, I'm not really a bettor myself, but I think it's great for the game. I think it's going to draw a lot of new fans. I know so many people that will bet on European soccer and not watch a lick of it. Obscure sports that they have no interest in, but then they bet on it, and all of a sudden you got their attention. I think this is going to be the same for lacrosse. I think you're going to have a ripple effect. What are your guys' thoughts on the PLL introducing betting this summer?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. We talked about getting that exposure for the sport out there with the Olympic time slots. This is just as big, or if not bigger. I think it's an awesome opportunity to get eyes on it that are just interested in the betting side of things, and then kind of get some of those same people just interested in the betting, interested in the sport too, to put more eyes on it, to grow the game as a whole. It's fantastic going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are closer to the indoor game than I am, really, but I know the NLL sort of has this partnership that they're working to get moving forward to, around betting. The NFL has put a team in Vegas, and you sort of look at the way sports is going. This is something that's just sort of getting adopted in the professional sports world. And if lacrosse has the opportunity to be a bit of a trailblazer in it and be at the front of it and sort of get there first, I think that's obviously great for the sport to be able to do. Hutton, like you said, there's a demographic and there's eyeballs out there that'll be drawn to the sport because they can bet on it. There, people who are very interested just in that part of things. But you look at the revenue numbers that are at stake for some of obviously the NFL is like it's its own animal, and comparing things to it sometimes can be ridiculous. But the revenue numbers associated with gambling that would happen if the NFL sort of starts going that route are insane. So it's also the potential to be a quality revenue stream for the sport. And in a summer where both leagues are going to lose a chunk of revenue thanks to coronavirus, I think coming up with revenue streams like that is the right thing to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're really, they're doing some. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do this summer, but they've talked about doing some crazy stuff like having players wear wearables and tracking their vitals and presenting that data in real time during the broadcast. So, I mean, they're doing some pretty innovative stuff. At least that's what they have in the works. Now, I don't know if we'll see that summer, but some interesting stuff. And with that, Matt Gaudette has gone to the Chaos. So he does not go to the defensive side of the ball, but I think it's a great fit. Talk a little bit more, guys, about Gaudette and how he's going to fit in with this offense with Josh Byrne and Connor Fields.
Yeah, Gaudette is the best off ball and just pure scorer in this group. I know there's some great attackmen in the group, but if you're looking for just somebody who can do that, he is by far the best of them. He's Yale's most outstanding player, or the tournament's most outstanding player for Yale's title run, where he was just scoring. Nobody could stop him. I think he had 13 goals in the tournament. Unbelievable hands. He's got a box background, and he'll probably go in that first round in the NLL draft too.
Mm-hmm.
You see a guy like him again playing off of the Connor Fields, playing off of a Josh Byrne. Maybe in the first year you saw a little too much of Connor Fields with the ball, dodging his man, and just not enough happening away from the ball to sort of create things, and maybe too much waiting for or hoping for Connor Fields to make something happen. This is a guy who can balance that, who can create for himself away from the ball and can punish you from different spots in the field. So, from a skill set standpoint, from a fit standpoint, I really love that. I think Towers now is going to have some really tough choices to make when it comes to picking the attack group that he dresses for games. There's going to be some really, really good guys who are either going to be running out of the box or not making a game day roster for the Chaos.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's tough, but yeah, I think he fits in well. And while we were talking, the Redwoods have made their selection. They take another face-off guy to add to their roster in Peyton Smith. We talked about he's out of Marist. 4-year stutter there. Speed guy. Paired with Puskuljan, I think they kind of replace Gorenly, and it's hard to replace Greg's presence both as a leader and a face-off guy. But they got those two guys, and then Jerry Raganis as well. I think with given a little bit more time to kind of jump in and not just get thrown into the fire. You have 3 solid guys right there. And then going off of that, we have another pick. Sean New has been selected by the Whips. So talk a little bit about guys Sean New and how he fits in, out of Holy Cross defense. We really thought that they would go more on the attack side of things, with the Whip Snakes. But what do you guys think of him?
Yeah, this one is a little surprising to me because the Whipsnakes were a team with a incredibly good defense, and that defense is coming back. So it's a little surprising. Sean New's a good defenseman. He's out of Holy Cross, if memory serves.
Yep.
He's quality player and athletic guy. 17 ground balls and 11 caused turnovers in the 7 games that they played this year. So, and he's a captain and defensive leader there as well. So, he's a guy who's got some skills in that area. A place where maybe they might be thinking about using him is behind a Michael Earhart, where you never really saw the Whip Snakes settle on who was going to be the guy to spell Earhart at LSM. Sometimes it was Isaac Baparo. Sometimes they had Alec Tullett on the roster for some of the season. So who's going to be that guy to be your clear number 2 LSM that's going to dress for you every week, or just has the ability to play low and in that spot to spell Earhart? I think Sean New can do that. So maybe a guy who's going to surprise some people in terms of I didn't expect him to be drafted before a Nick Mellon, before guys like that. But
Andrew Pettit too.
So I think it's an interesting pick by Coach Dax. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a guy that was drafted in the MLL too. He went 22 overall to the Lizards, his hometown squad. So it'll be interesting to see. There's so much fog right now. We don't know the clarity when it comes to what these players are deciding. Was this draft pick based off of knowing that he was going to sign with the PLL, or we're just not sure at this moment. So if I was a betting man, I'd say he's probably heading to the PLL after being drafted, but it'll be interesting to see. He's just one guy. We already mentioned a guy like Matt Gaudette, who got drafted by Philly. We'll see what these players do.
No, yeah, for sure. And, Coach Stagnita on the broadcast mentioned, like you said, Dan, that they are expecting him to be a change of pace guy for Michael Earhart. I think it's Sean New pick is an interesting one, but, I think the Whips now have to go offense with that last pick, 14th. I just wonder what's going to be left for them. That's what I think. It's a little bit of a reach to take Sean New at 7. I don't know if he would be there at 14 either, but I think you have a better shot at maybe drafting an offensive guy at 7 and then, waiting. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, the Whips lost, I think it was about 61 points, something like that, in expansion when their offense got pilfered by the Water Dogs. So, that's a place where I thought maybe they'd go to. I know they already sort of grabbed a Zed Williams in the expansion draft, or in the entry draft, I should say. And they sort of made some moves there. I think they acquired Max Tuttle from the Chrome. So
Christian Mazzone as well in the entry draft.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, not Christian Mazzone. TJ Camizio too. He's more of a short stick defensive midi, but he can push in transition as well.
Yeah, so. If you watched the Blaze last summer, you saw TJ make some plays for them on the offensive end too. So, I think that they addressed that a little bit. I still think I'm with you, Hutton. I thought maybe they'd go offense here. I would expect a guy like Sean New maybe to be available still for them at 14, given some of the other polls still available. But, who knows? Maybe this will start sort of a run on defensemen. Maybe we'll see something happen here.
And, maybe he has a lot of confidence in a guy like Dylan Maltz, who didn't see that much time, but, had a big presence at Maryland. Northern Virginia product, I always like to throw that out there because I did play against him in youth ball. But, maybe they decide that, they have some guys on their roster that just didn't see that much time last year that are expecting to have a bigger role come 2020. So we don't know that. But, I was very surprised that they took a defensive guy at 7. Now at number 8, we have the Water Dogs. So where do you guys think, they might take, do they address the defensive side now? Maybe they take a Nick Mellon, who we thought maybe might go to them at number 3. If they could get him at number 8, I think that would be a steal. Do you think that might be the route they take? I know Rigney was kind of here.
Yeah, I kind of like Mellon here. This could be a place where you see maybe a guy like Aiden Hines out of Yale. Another sort of athletic pole who can play a lot of spots for them. Maybe you see a Resetti here at a BU. I think there's a couple of polls here that make sense if that's the side of the bowl that the Water Dogs want to go to.
And what about, do you think with the Chrome coming in at 9, Adam, where do you think they address? Do you think maybe they go goalie there, kind of back up Queener and Galloway. I know they also have Alex Reddy on that roster. So, to add a goalie, 4 goalies is a lot, but, maybe they like a guy like Matt DeLuca to take a chance on him.
Yeah, I think these next 2 picks are, and I think Dan can probably attest to, these are probably where we see a guy like Matt DeLuca go, what Water Dogs or Chrome. The Atlas are set at keep. They have Scotty Rogers backing up Kincannon. The Archers have their 2 goalie system. The Chaos brought in Dylan Ward, Dylan not with a Y, into the fold, and he's a top goalie. And his name doesn't get mentioned enough, but I think Jack Kelly is one of the best goalies in the world, and he was injured last year, and Gunnar Walt was the backup for the Rookie of the Year and Tim Troutner. So I could see them going keeper here for sure. With these if a keeper goes, I foresee it happening in these next 2 picks potentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. I can see DeLuca here. Absolutely. Again, like we had mentioned it at the top, but Coach Copeland may be trying to bring a little competition to that goalie spot for his team by bringing in a DeLuca and then just having a 3 goalie mix of Cipriano and Tate Boyce and DeLuca, and sort of just seeing how things shake out.
No, yeah, for sure. And it looks like Copeland's about to make the pick, so we'll have that pretty shortly. Now, another thing is too with the Archers. They picked number 1, and now they have a little bit of a gap. Where they take at number 11. Where do you think we'll see them go? In this draft, do you think they add another offensive player? I mean, their defense is pretty set. Their goalie's pretty set. I have to imagine it's got to be a attackman or a midfielder. But where do you guys think they go?
The need for them, I think, is in the midfield now. You had your need at X Attack, and you filled it with Grant Ament, which is spectacular. But this is a team that also lost, like we had said, following that pick, quite a few quality players at the midfield. So, they brought in good players too, but the Ben McIntosh, Danny Ite, those are athletic guys that you're going to need to try and replace. So I would think that's a spot they try and go. It's tough to know who's available to them, honestly. Like, I'm just not totally sure what the player pool that they're dealing with is.
Yep.
But that's a spot I think they need to look at for their next pick.
Absolutely. And so they got Mike Rabel on right now talking about this championship series in quarantine. They haven't revealed the location yet where that's going to be, but what do you guys think needs to happen for this to all come together? I mean, it's a pretty tremendous idea. We kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. No other league is kind of able to do this. Some leagues that are too big, like the NFL, Major League Baseball, are just too big to kind of do this, and they have legacy that it would be kind of tough for them to kind of pull this off. Other leagues, are maybe kind of in the middle, like the NLL we talked about, could have maybe tried something like this, but they have 13 teams, more players. It's kind of tougher. PLL is kind of in a perfect spot with 7 teams. What do you guys think, of this quarantine environment, occurring during a 3-week period?
It's kind of the perfect storm. You never want something like this to happen, but I think the league like the PLL is making the best of the scenario that's put in front of them. I think the Rabels are talking right now about how they're going to make this possible and keep it safe. And it's not just the players, but it's all of the support staff as well that they need to bring in. It's about 300 people together. And for that to happen, people need to be safe. So I think they're kind of going through everything right now, and we'll be getting an announcement soon on where this is going to be held.
Yeah. And if they can pull it off too, they're going to have so many eyes on it. Like we mentioned, with the NBC Gold now being available to 13 other countries, including Canada. I know our friends in Canada were a little disappointed they couldn't watch a lot of the games this year. And, you have some top Canadian talent, and, Dylan Ward, Zach Kerr now coming to the league. You already had Wes Berg. Curtis Dixon's going to play this year. I mean, those are some big name guys that they're, Canadians are going to get to watch. We even had somebody reach out to us from Ireland that's excited and wants to know a little bit more about, the sport of lacrosse. So I think it's going to really have a global impact. And, now that the Olympics aren't happening, it's, another, way that the sport can be on full display globally.
Yeah, I think there's obviously just given the situation, it has to just be said that obviously there's a risk involved to doing it. If somebody were to get sick, obviously it would be a big problem. The protocols they have in place sound like they're doing every possible precaution and taking every measure imaginable. So, you're hoping it goes off without a hitch, but understanding that there is still some risk involved. It'll be interesting to see if players, because they do have the choice, they can opt out and say, I'm not going to play in this for whatever reason. So there are players in this league who are coaches at Division I schools, who are coaches at Division III schools, at Division II schools. There's guys who are going to have to make a decision where if I go to this and something happens, how does that affect me, my family, my job when I come back? What does that really look like? So, I think from a player availability standpoint, there's a lot of unknown there. I'm not suggesting that, they're going to have a problem with guys wanting to go. I still think a ton of guys are going to want to go, but it's something that guys are going to be thinking about.
Yep. No, it's definitely something to think about as if with any decision, we don't know what's going into these players' personal decisions, to either, play or not, to join a league. I mean, we've heard that, some of these guys that are signing with the MLO, it's just better for their schedules, and maybe that's what's best for them. They want to play in their hometown. So it's always a lot of different factors that go into it, and that's important to remember, that we don't have all the answers and we don't have all the reasonings behind these players' decisions.
Yeah, and just heads up to all those fans out there, with 20 minutes left in the programming, we still are waiting on 7 picks, so it's going to be a flurry for these last 20 minutes.
Rapid
for sure.
fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get back to Paul, if we don't get a chance to talk about the goalie situation again, I did want to talk about Matt DeLuca a little bit more, and I think he's a fantastic fit for the type of game the PLL put on the field last year. We saw goalies having a very successful season, had high saves. He saw a lot of shots during his time at Delaware, averaged almost 15 saves per game while he was there. So I think he is a great fit for this league based off of his previous success at Delaware and the types of offenses he faced in the CAA.
No, yeah, and Coach DeLuca, no relation actually. His coach at Delaware had a few words that we got to talk to him a few words about DeLuca and how his game is fit. He says Matt can be an intimidating presence in the goal because he takes up a lot of space with his 6'6" frame, combines his size and unusually quick feet and hands. So he's got obviously high things to say, having him be a 4-year starter at Delaware for him. And those are his thoughts on his former Blue Hen goalie. Yeah, I think he'd be a perfect fit in this league. And the goalie talent is just absurd right now in the PLL. As you guys said, it's tough for these goalies to crack a game day roster if you're not named the starter, just because there is so much talent. All the backups we mentioned, were starters in college, and I think that just shows the wealth of talent in professional lacrosse right now.
Yeah, I'm clearly biased, obviously, but I'd argue that lacrosse goalie is the toughest position to get on the field for in all of professional sports at this point.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's too far off. There's such few teams. Until we start to get more teams, it's it's always going to be that depth of talent. In the women's game, it's even harder for them. You had Megan Trainor splitting time. Tewaaraton winner last year. So
Yeah.
I'm not Megan Trainor. I'm sorry, Megan Taylor. Got it, Megan Trainor on the brain. With her songs. Bad error on my part. I apologize, Megan Taylor, Tewaaraton.
That's live.
This is live. We'll edit that. But yeah, no.
Yeah. No, I mean, like the PLL is a place where either Blaze Reardon or Dylan Ward isn't going to be a starting goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how good the goalie talent is in the PLL.
Absolutely.
Like Adam had mentioned, Jack Kelly, who's a Team USA goalie, who I don't know if he made a start in year one. I know he had injuries and stuff like that, but this is a ridiculously deep league in terms of goalies. It's really tough to try and crack a roster, even in a backup role.
Yep. Yeah, we're getting down on the wire here. We're definitely gonna rip through this final round. So we'll definitely react a little bit. The nice thing is we are having 5 coaches on after the show. So if you guys stay with us, you'll get to hear from Coach Towers, Coach Stagnita, Coach Nat St. Laurent, Coach Sudan, and Coach Rubior on their picks So you'll get a little bit more insight, on what their thought process was, not just us talking about, what we think and why they did it. But I think that'll be definitely beneficial if you guys are able to stay, and if you're watching right now and tune in later as well. We got Ryan Boyle right now, discussing. He's discussing the depth kind of that we were talking about, how he talked about the Archers having 2 starting goaltenders and splitting time, and 2 face-off guys too, and a Brendan Fowler and Stephen Kelly, kind of give that change of pace.
It'll certainly be interesting to see what happens with a lot of players that aren't drafted in these 14 picks. It sounds like free agency is on freeze, right? So we're not sure if these undrafted guys will be able to be picked up by these current teams. Will they head to the MLL? What their situation is? So we're obviously in kind of up in the air scenarios in a lot of ways, but it'll be interesting more specifically to see what happens with these undrafted.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too. Last year we saw it was a pretty even split in the PLL draft, who went to the MLL and who stayed in the PLL. More of the later rounds ended up, staying in the PLL. Some people like, Pat Spencer went and played basketball, had other plans too. So, it's definitely interesting to see. But I think we might see a little bit more players kind of commit to the PLL from this draft than they did last year. Now it looks like the Water Dogs are, obviously still on the clock, but about to make their pick. What are we going with? I'm going with Mellon.
I think Nick Mellon makes sense for them. I think that side of the ball is a spot they could go. I think Andrew Pettit is a guy you could see in the spot too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think though they did add Krause, so I don't know. It's another offensive piece. I mean, Pettit though is a very versatile scorer. Again, and like we said, it's tough to crack these rosters. Some guys might be drafted and might not see the field too much in this championship series, but they have big plans for them down the road as well. What about you, Adam? You think they take DeLuca?
What I was gonna say, yeah. Let's switch it up a little. Let's give some goalie love. We've talked about him enough. He'd be a good fit for the squad.
We're gonna be really rapid fire with this. So yeah, we will have immediately following the draft, we'll have Coach Towers join us. We'll interview these coaches for just around 2 to 5 minutes, not too long, but just enough to get their thoughts on who they drafted. I'm really interested to hear Coach Towers' thought process behind drafting Matt Gaudette and who they take in the second round. And then you got Coach Stagnina, who's going to talk about his pick too, going defensive side in the first round. We'll see what he does in the second round. Coach Nat St. Laurent too, getting another face-off guy. Coach Sudan going with Tom Rigney on defense. He's really stockpiled a lot of defensive pieces now. He's got Jesse Bernhardt, Joel White's still there. Now they got Tom Rigney. They acquired in a trade James Barclay as well as Foster Huggins. So a lot of polls that they can kind of plug and play there. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. And then Ben Rubior will also be joining us, and we'll actually have him for a podcast episode coming up as well. We're going to talk to him a little bit more, not only about becoming the Bulls coach, but also just playing in the MLL, winning some championships with the Bayhawks as well. Now, a team we didn't really talk too much about in the second round, what they might do, is the Chrome. Where do you guys think they go in this second round? I'm sorry, we talked about them a little bit with the goalie, but if they don't go goalie, do you think they go attackman? Maybe they take Andrew Pettit.
Pettit could be a guy that fits for them. I kind of like some of the places where the Chrome are at midfield. You traded, you lost some pieces in Tuttle and Dennis being traded away. We'll see what kind of guys that Sudo wants to bring in there to sort of build that offense back up. I thought, the defensive end was the place to start for them. So, I think that's sort of how you want to build your team. It's tough to say. Pettit could be a good pick for them, I think, at this point. It's interesting to think about how he'd work alongside a Wolf and a Gutterding at attack, or if you try and run him out of the box and maybe bump a Crotty or a Danowski to attack if you want to keep dressing those guys as well. So, we'll sort of see how he might fit there. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yep. And here we go with the pick. They select Matt DeLuca, so Adam is correct.
Yeah, like Dan said, that competition factor is going to be a big one. I think he's an awesome addition to bring in with those other two veteran goalies already on the roster. So good pickup for Coach.
For sure. And, he's a big body. He's going to compete with Tate Boyce as well as Charlie Cipriano for that role. So, it's going to be an interesting, mini training camp that they're doing to see who comes out as the starter. And we might see them maybe use a 2-goalie system too with, so many games. It'll definitely be interesting to see, what they do with that route. Now we'll see what Coach Sudan does.
Yeah, these picks should be coming fast and furious here. Clock's ticking. PLL.
And so it is Reese Eddy joins the Chrome. So they go defense again. He's more of an LSM, so he can kind of push and transition if they need to. What do you guys think of this? This is a little surprising to me.
I'm a pretty big Reese Eddy fan. He absolutely just blew up this year. And in 6 games this year, he had 16 caused turnovers and 31 ground balls. He's a guy who's going to get the ball from the other team or get it off the ground. He can play on a wing, and he's going to get it to your offense, and he can be impactful on that end of the field. I think that's something where when you think about him with a Joel White or some of the other guys that are on that Chrome team, you want more of those guys who can key that transition for you, and Reese Eddy is perfect for that. So I like this pick for the Chrome. I like them going 2 defensive guys too. I like them with the solid, stay at home, strong defender in Vigny, and then the guy who's the more versatile, going to get up and down the field and win the game for you between the lines kind of guy in Reese Eddy.
Absolutely. And now with the 10th pick, the Atlas select Aiden Hines. So they do end up addressing the defensive side of the ball like we expected. Talk about Hines' game a little bit, Adam, and, what he kind of brings to this Atlas team.
Yeah, absolutely. Second team All-Ivy, honorable mention All-American. Great guy on the ball hawk, 30 ground balls, 24 caused turnovers. He's a great addition, championship caliber. We haven't talked too much about that yet, bringing in guys that have had success at the college level, super important, and they were able to win a championship with Yale. So this is an awesome addition to that Bull squad.
Absolutely. And then with the 11th pick, the Archers select Jack Rapine out of Johns Hopkins. I don't think he was on many people's draft. He was a starter, though, with them. Philly guy, so it looks like Chris Bates goes with a Philly guy there. What do you guys think about Rapine? He's solid defensive guy on really solid feet. I think played at Hopkins, and obviously with Hopkins getting a new coach, looks like he wanted to go pro. We weren't really sure what his plans were, but what do you guys think about Rapine?
Yeah, he had I think left the team at Hopkins, or there were some circumstances there where it looked like he wasn't going to be returning to the program. But he started I think every game in his career when he was there, and he had 40 caused turnovers in his career. He's an absolute machine at taking the ball away. He's a great ground ball guy, and he's going to be an impactful player. I don't know enough sort of about his circumstances. I'm not as plugged in, I guess, as I need to be to know what's going on there. But I like the pick from the sense that he's proven that he can be a productive player at the top level programs and in the biggest games in the country at the college level. So, with his skill set and everything, he makes sense to play in this league.
No, absolutely. And the Chaos are currently on the clock. So Chaos again, I think that would be another good spot for Nick Mellon. We haven't heard his name called, which is a little bit surprising. He did get drafted, pretty high overall by the Cannons, and I know Sean Quirk was really excited to have him on. Maybe his intention, is to play in the MLL, and maybe that's why we won't hear his name. He hasn't signed yet with the Cannons, but that could be very well why the case he has not, been drafted yet. But I do think if he does go, I think he'd be a good fit for the Chaos. Who else do you think though the Chaos might end up, picking in this draft? I mean, right now, Andrew Pettit's name, I think they added Gaudette, so I don't think Chaos he'll land there, but we could see him maybe fall to the Redwoods, or I really thought he would be a perfect fit for the Whip Snakes. At 7, if they can get him at 14, I think he would, be perfect for them. He also went in the MLL draft too. We don't know again what these players' circumstances are, but with these final 3 picks coming in, who's a guy whose name we haven't heard that you expect to get called in these next 3 picks?
I mean, top of mind is Nick Mellon. You'd think, I honestly thought he would have been taken by now, and maybe he did, speak with PLL coaches and say his intention is to play for the Cannons. I'm not sure there, but he's a guy who I think would have been picked by now. Maybe their PLL coaches aren't in love with the fact that he's a little bit on the shorter side for a defenseman. I think he's listed at 5'9" or 5'10", so maybe they want bigger bodies, and that's just something you kind of see in the league. But Mellon's a guy who I could see making sense here. Something that's just noteworthy is there's no middies in this draft really. Nobody's taking midfield. We're all taking attackmen or pulls or face-off guys or goalies or whatever. But the midi group here has been, I think, Costaville, and I think that's really it. Some of these attackmen might run out of the box as midfielders, but their natural position really is attack. So maybe this is a spot where these teams have some guys that are a little further down draft boards that we might have seen where they like a midfielder or two, and they want to try and build their midfield a little bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, it's interesting too because, you have guys like, not just at the midfield, but all across the board whose names we probably expected to even be heard just to get their draft rights, like a JT Giles Harris, Dox Aiken, Jared Bernhardt, who were planning to play football this year. We don't know what their situation is. It sounds like they might still plan on football. We don't know if we'll have a college football season. But I guess, again, all the uncertainty is, again, really caused from this COVID pandemic. And it's kind of, it's been very interesting to kind of see. But let's hear what, Andy Towers has to say after the draft. He's going to pick right now, and we'll see what he picks with the 12th pick. And they take Jeff Teat with the 12th overall pick. Wow, guys. I did not expect his name to be heard just because we didn't know. We did think that, he definitely would be eligible for this draft. We don't know his situation with college, but what do you guys think? Jeff Teat, again, was sitting at a lot of people's top of the draft boards with so much uncertainty. He fell to the Cannons in the 5th round in the MLL draft and now goes to the Chaos at number 12. What are you guys' thoughts? Another Canadian.
I guess coach goes with the, even if it's uncertain, the Cannons went with Sowers and T, and I guess Coach Towers is like, it's worth the risk, he might have something that we don't know, but I mean, to get a 2-time All-American, one of the fastest player to ever to 100 points, I mean, it's a no-brainer if he knows something that we don't.
Yeah, no. I have the same sort of answer as this he knows something we don't, just because, the rules of engagement for this, I thought were the guys we're taking aren't going back to school. And if that's the case, and this means that Jeff Teat isn't going back to school, then Coach Towers can now, he might as well just put 6 attackmen on the field on offense. He's just so loaded at that spot.
No, it's absurd.
He's absolutely the type of player that he's supposed to go to the Chaos. Like in football, there are certain guys who are supposed to play for like the Baltimore Ravens or the Steelers or whatever. He's supposed to be on the Chaos.
No, absolutely. And, is it too early to say that Canada's official team is the Chaos? I mean, they got some of the top Canadians in the world. And it looks like with the 13th pick, the Redwoods select Chris Price. He's an LSM, kind of fits, their style, and replaces Karalunas, who they lost in the expansion draft. So we have him, and then it looks like Coach Stagnita is making the final pick as well. So we'll get that for you guys real quick, and then we'll be ready to talk about Jeff Teat a little bit more with Coach Towers.
It looks like the Whips and Coach Staggs went with one of his son's former teammates out of Hopkins, Matt Hubler.
Hubler, okay, yeah. So then they do address they do go with Matt Hubler out of Hopkins. Again, surprising to hear that some of these guys' names that we didn't get heard, like Andrew Pettit, I really thought he would get drafted. And another guy, Nick Mellon, who it sounds like he's going to be playing for the Boston Cannons this summer if he plays pro lacrosse, because we did not hear his name called, and he was definitely at top of our list. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. What are your guys' thoughts overall on this draft?
I think these late round picks are certainly interesting. Chris Price is a guy out of High Point who's again quality defender and is somebody who's gonna fight to make the roster and everything. But seeing a Nick Mellon go undrafted is certainly surprising to me. It's not something I would have expected. And then obviously the sort of the shock of the draft, I think, is Jeff Teat getting taken, because I'm not really sure what that means. But
Yeah.
we can ask the coaches of what they know about that. Yeah, I would absolutely encourage anybody out there to stick around, because that's probably going to be the first thing that gets asked when Coach Towers is around. But some names on here that we expected to see. The top of the draft went like you thought it would go. The bottom of the draft had some surprises in it, I think. We learned that Nick Mellon wasn't going to get drafted. We see guys like Chris Price go. We see Sean New go maybe a little early. Hubler, you take somebody who's a short stick D-midi, I guess, to try and fortify that spot on your roster. So that's an interesting pick as well. We had mentioned there just haven't been that many middies picked, and the group just didn't seem all that deep. So that's kind of where they wound up. But definitely an interesting draft, and interesting to try and figure out now how these guys make their way onto this roster if they intend on playing in this championship series. How do they crack this group and get to be part of it?
Absolutely, and I think the biggest surprise, I can't wait to get Coach Stagnita on, because I'm just surprised it didn't go offense, in this draft. There's a lot of pieces on the board, and maybe, at 7, they just felt like the guys that they would have taken just weren't there. We just don't know. But, definitely very interesting. We have a lot to talk about with these coaches. We'll wait while Coach Towers will get on pretty shortly. But Adam, what are your kind of thoughts with this overall draft?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to that whip snake side things, I think that means they have big things in store for a guy like Zed Williams. I think they are expecting big things out of him come this year. So it'll be interesting to see. Dan talked a little bit about how many of these guys are actually going to break and crack a roster potentially to head to this championship series. It'll be interesting to see, but all these teams got better,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's super interesting. Again, Jeff Teat in that second round, Coach Towers. I mean, that's a whole story in itself. Super exciting to see him on the Chaos if this does come true. If not, maybe we have to wait a year. It's still, I think, worth the wait. We could see him on the Cannons as well. We don't know what he's thinking, but if he ends up playing for the Chaos or the Cannons, I think it's a steal for Coach Quirk or Coach Towers either way. With that type of talent, he might go number 1 in the NLL draft. So
yeah,
very interesting.
I bet Matt Gaudet is texting Jeff Teat right now, and Matt Gaudet has to be having like a fever dream.
Yeah.
The other Jackson that are going to be out there. He's like, I get to play with who feeding me? I get to play with all these guys feeding me, and I get to just play my usual game and wind up scoring whatever 4 or 5 goals a game, while everybody thinks about all these other guys that they have to stop with the ball, and all just keep shredding you off the ball. Matt Gaudet is making out in a great spot in this draft, because, like we just said, that offense, all these Dodgers, all these eyeballs away from him is exactly what he needs to crush teams.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. What are your thoughts, Adam? Like, who do you think? I mean, I don't want to say there's winners or losers, but who do you think really won this draft in terms of the guys they got and filled the needs? I mean, there's definitely a lot of winners, but what's a team that stood out to you?
It's tough to say. I mean, a team like the Water Dogs, who added a Michael Krause who's super versatile, and then if we do see Matt DeLuca and Cage come this championship series, they might have the most impact. Those two players from kind of as a whole. That's just one thing that jumped out to me right off the bat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I'm going to see if we can get Coach Towers right now. If not, we'll have Coach Stagnita followed up. So let's get Coach Stagnita here. So we'll talk about his 2 picks. Just gonna hold on real quick. So we'll get Coach Towers first, and then we'll get Coach Stagnita right after. We'll stick to the original. All right. Coach Towers, how are you?
I'm above average. How are you guys?
You should be above average with your 2 picks that you just made. A great draft by you. You took 2 Canadians. We were talking about how I think Canada's unofficial PLL team has got to be the Chaos. But talk to us a little bit first about the Mac Audek pick.
He's a no-brainer. He's the best righty finisher in the draft, far and away, and he's a lot more than just a finisher. He has range on his shot. He's got unbelievable amount of swagger. His intangibles are off the chart. He's a phenomenal teammate. He's physically durable. He's mentally tough. He can play within the framework of scheme. He's way more athletic than people probably realize. I did a lot of due diligence on him. Going into the draft, I knew he was an unbelievable player. But after speaking with Coach Shea, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, it became very, very obvious that he was the guy that we were going to take no matter what our position was in the draft.
No, yeah, it's awesome that he fell to you guys at 5. I think it's a great pick. Excited to see, Connor Fields feeding him, as well as maybe another guy too, Jeff Teat. Talk us a little bit about taking Jeff Teat in the 2nd round. Obviously, world-class athlete. Was high on a lot of people's boards. We didn't really know his situation going into the draft, but talk to us about this Jeff Teat pick.
I've loved Jeff Teat's game for the last 4 or 5 years. As a Brown alum and a Brown fan, I've been very aware of how great of a player, how great of a competitor Jeff has been over the course of his time at Cornell. I also know a lot of Cornell alums that speak incredibly highly of him as it relates to his character and how great of a teammate he is and all those sort of intangibles that you can't see. It doesn't take a lacrosse genius to watch him play and realize that he makes everybody better instantaneously with everything that he does. The reality is, I'm looking at that pick as a can't-lose situation for us. If Jeff ends up going back to Cornell and he's cleared and that's what he wants to do, I'm 100% supportive of him going and helping them win a national championship in 2021. If something happens and Jeff is not able to go back to Cornell and to help, Coach Busick and his teammates win a national championship, and he decides to come out and play professional lacrosse, he would be an immediate impact player on our team based on his style of play and his respective intangibles. So I took a flyer on him. It couldn't be, more exciting to hear how it plays out. I hope it turns out the way he wants it to turn out. If he really wants to go back to Cornell, I hope that's what happens for him. You live one time. You want to help your teammates and your coaches that have sacrificed so much for you be successful. And if it doesn't work out, the hope is that he's excited to be a member of Chaos Lacrosse Club and we move ahead.
No, absolutely, Coach. Well, we appreciate you joining us, giving us a little bit of insight behind your picks, and we look forward to seeing the Chaos take the field this summer.
Thanks a lot, brother. Great to see you. Thanks for everything you do for the sport.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Coach Towers. Talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.
And now we'll be joined by Coach Stagnita and hear his 2 picks. He had Sean New in the 1st round as well as Matt Hubler in the 2nd round. They went defensive side on both picks, so let's get Coach Stagnita in this chat real quick. We're connecting the audio right now. Hey, Coach Stagnita, how are you?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. Tremendous draft. You went a little bit different route than we expected, but let's talk a little bit about these two picks. You got a tremendous defender out of Holy Cross and Sean New, and then a Hopkins guy in Matt Hubler, just short stick defensive midfielder. Talk to us a little bit about both these picks.
Well, our approach was, our approach was to, let me do this. I'm sorry.
No, all good. Yep.
There you go. That probably helps.
Yes. Yep.
Our approach, was to fill immediate needs, right? People that going into this tournament were going to give us some depth and some guarantee that when we show up there, we're going to have, we'll be sure to have 22 guys who can fulfill the needs and the roles that, that we need to be successful in that tournament. We didn't feel like it would, we felt like we were in pretty good shape on the offensive side. We have a lot of kind of multi-purpose guys, and we felt like we could backfill that. We did lose a couple guys in the expansion draft, but we feel like we replaced at least two of those, of those four offensive guys with Zed Williams and with Max Tuttle. So there's, with guys who coach in college and, a couple of the early guys we talked to that might have some conflict during that period of time. We decided to go for guys in this draft that were going to be able to fulfill an immediate need for us.
No, absolutely. And you did that. We talked a little bit how you could kind of insert Sean New behind Michael Earhart, and then you got Matt Hubler, who's a tremendous, kind of two-way guy. Going off of that too, I know you mentioned, Zed Williams, Max Tuttle, who you acquired in a trade. You got TJ Camizio now on the roster. You even got a guy like Dylan Maltz, who didn't see too much time last year, but was tremendous at Maryland. Talk to me a little bit about these new pieces as well as the guys on the roster that are probably going to have an increased role.
Well, what we're doing now is I think we're really strong right up the middle of the field. And you mentioned we have one of the best goalies in the league, one of the best face-off guys in the league. We have one of the best attackmen in the league. And around them, we have the best 2-point shooter in the league from last year. We have a lot of the big pieces, right? And then, as you said, we got to fill in those other pieces. Zed's a professional, right? He's been doing this. He's still a young guy, but he's been doing this for a while. Again, very flexible, diverse skill set. Can play on the attack, can play at the midfield. He's played wings on face-offs. Like, he is truly, a Swiss Army knife, as is Max. Max Tuttle played attack for a lot of his college career out of need, so he's capable of doing that. He's going to he can play midfield. He actually, a little out of position last year. He played D midfield for the Chrome. So again, somebody who can survive on both ends. And the guy everybody's forgot about that really gives us the third piece to this is Brad Smith. Right? He's like a draft pick for us this year. He was highly touted coming out of college. He played attack in his senior year because of a foot injury. He's now 100% healed. He's another piece. What we needed a little bit more of, we felt after last season, were big, strong downhill dodgers. And we have that definitely in Tuttle and in Brad. And, at the same time, Zed is a big physical player. So, one guy with guys like that, one guy actually fills two roles. So we feel like they have the ability to come in and pick up where, we lost some really talented guys, but where those guys left off. And, we felt comfortable with our base defense and what we had coming back. But, we needed a little more depth there. We gave up someone that we gave up someone in James Barclay who can play close defense and shorty. So we needed to replace that piece. And again, with college coaches in our lineup and, and with Ty Warner, not knowing when med school is going to start, I thought that, and people are going to question it. I'm sure they will, and that's their prerogative. But I felt like bringing in Matt Hubler, who I knew and had been able to see, over the last 4 years. I mean,
Yep.
he's 5'11", 200 pounds. He was an attackman in high school. He's a two-way guy. He's tough. He picks up the tough ground balls. And, if we're going to have to replace someone like Ty, be it this year or next year, we need a big body that can go out there and cover those big middies and allow Mike Earhart to be able to play those change of direction guys.
No, absolutely.
So again, I think we fulfilled two needs. We do expect, those new pieces to really be able to step up. They're not rookies, right? They're experienced guys in Zed and in Tuttle. So there's no, there's not going to be an adjustment period, and there's no, we know already what they're capable of doing at this level.
Yep, no, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And, again, Brad Smith is a guy who has slipped my mind a little bit too, just because, he didn't play last year. But the fact that he's fully expected to play this year, I think is tremendous for you guys. We look forward to seeing the defending champs take the field July 25th. Thank you again for your time, Coach Staggs, and best of luck going forward.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yep, take care. All right, so yeah, you got a little of insight too on Coach Stagnita, and they feel very comfortable with the pieces that they have. Makes a lot of sense. Again, we're kind of playing armchair quarterback here with a lot of this, so it's kind of cool to get the coach's insight. Let's go now to Coach Nat St. Laurent a little bit and talk about his picks. He took Peyton Smith, and then they ended up going with, drawing a blank on who their second pick was. Chris Price as well. So that kind of fits, in there. It replaces Carolina. So let's add him. Hey, Coach Nat, how are you?
Hey, fellas, how we doing? Let me
doing
start
well,
my
doing
video
well.
here. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for jumping on. Great draft. You got Peyton Smith. You have another face-off guy on your roster to go with Greg Puskulijan. So talk us a little bit about what made him a good fit for the Redwoods.
Yeah, we needed a face-off guy. I'm really confident and like what we have with Puskulijan right now. We've played together. I've coached. We have that relationship. And then, I knew Peyton was going to be taking draws all summer long. And I go back to the career he's had. He played some short stick D midi for them too. That's something that didn't come across on the air, but he was the MAC Defensive Player of the Week several times. So he can play a little short stick D midi. He's athletic. He's tough. So when you're playing in a tournament like we are, we really need somebody that can play, more than just one role, as you guys know and have alluded to.
Yeah, and then talk to us a little bit too. You got Chris Price out of High Point. You lost Brian Karolounis in the expansion draft, unfortunately. So he kind of, fits in that role. Talked about about his game a little bit.
Yeah, I love his game. He's kind of under the radar. He's extremely tough. He's very athletic. He's got a great stick. He's scored a lot of goals, get shots off in the game. So I really think his game is going to translate to our league well when he's ready. We know we don't have to insert him right away. We still have John Sexton. We still have Larkin Kemp. But with this tournament, we want some depth and we want some guys that can run. And we're excited to debut Hugh Krantz this year as well, who played at Notre Dame and is healthy and he's ready to go. And Chris is going to compete for that time as well. But just watching the second half of their game against UVA and what Chris was able to do, I really liked him. He plays with an edge. He's stronger than people think, faster than people think. And we want to push. We didn't quite play as fast as we wanted to last year or had hoped to. And I think that was tough because we couldn't get into the flow. And I think if you see our run that we put the second half and in the playoffs with scoring twos in transition and getting up and down a little bit, that was because we had a healthy Greg Grenlian and had some poles that could push it. So that's what we're going to try to do. And we hope that both of these young men can do for us.
No, it's awesome. And there were some rumblings that you guys might trade up, maybe try to get a guy, another Notre Dame guy and Brian Costabile. How close were you guys to trading up? And ultimately, why do you think it didn't work out?
Well, I think Cost is just an unbelievable talent that just fits this league so well. And Coach Rubior and I had some conversations and some discussions. And to get a player like him, you have to give up a lot. And we weren't in a position to do that. and we love our team. In fact, I really love our team. Do we like Costa? Without question, he's great. But we're really thrilled with Peyton Smith. And, we felt that Peyton and Chris were our needs. If we get Costa,
Yep.
he's a great player. He's a great shooter. He's going to be good in this league. But we like our middies too. We've got 5 pretty good middies that we feel very confident in. And, there's some things that people are going to realize this summer too. Clark Peterson, when they played the U.S. team, he was running midfield. So, we've got some options there that we're really excited about.
Absolutely. I mean, he did some wonders for you guys in those first couple games, and you guys added some other pieces, so he didn't see as much time, but he's another guy we're fully expecting to see suit up again for the Redwoods and excited about. But thank you again, Coach, for coming on. Tremendous draft. We're looking forward to seeing you guys take the field July 25th.
Thanks. I appreciate everything you guys do. You do a great job, and if I can help you or do anything moving forward, I'm all in.
All right, we appreciate it, Coach. Thank you. Best of luck going forward, and we can't wait to watch you guys on NBC.
Thanks. You guys be safe and healthy.
Yep, you too.
Take care.
Yeah, so they talked about, he did think about drafting up a little bit, trading up a little bit. Wasn't in the cards, and talk to me a little bit too, Dan, about he mentioned they have 5 solid midfielders that I think they're world-class midfielders. I guess talk to me a little bit about their midfield right now and why I think the Redwoods are one of the scarier teams going into this season.
The midfield unit for the Redwoods is loaded with two-way talent. They acquired Miles Jones. We remember that they traded Sergio Salcido, and that draft pick that went with it actually didn't impact this year. There's probably a fun hypothetical exercise in there somewhere to figure out who would have gone where if that pick actually moved. But you have Miles Jones, you have Sergio Perkovic, you have Brent Adams, you have Pat Harbison, you have Jack Neer, who are guys who can be involved on the offensive end, even though they're really, you consider them to be short stick D middies. But Jack Neer scored one of the biggest goals of the Redwoods season this year in the title game. So, you have guys there in particular with Adams and Perkovic who will play both ends and, can be dangerous in transition. You really saw it with Perkovic towards the end of last year, where he would play good enough defense that he's not the best short stick D midi in the league, but he's good enough. And then since they don't have to play sub games and he's just part of the transition, he can find himself lanes and seems to get set for a 2, which he has range from 20 yards. So, the Redwoods, I think, have built that part of their team really, really well. We'll see sort of how, as Coach mentioned, getting maybe Peterson into that group as well. We'll see sort of how that works out. Peterson was a first round pick last year. He's a guy who can play, and he's got a spot on his team. So, the Redwoods are in an interesting spot, I think. Another sort of interesting thing we heard, I think, was from Coach Stagnetta, who was talking about, drafting because he's sort of getting ready to lose a guy like Tyler Warner. Ty's going to med school and everything. That's a big piece to be losing. He's one of the best short stick D middies in the sport. So when he gets on with that part of his life, you're going to have to find somebody who's pretty special to replace him. So, I think maybe that's sort of the rationale for the picking a guy like Huber, who you're thinking maybe this is a short stick D midi, a guy we can develop down the road. He's definitely not at Ty's level yet because not many people are, but I think that was an interesting, piece of insight there from Coach Stagnetta.
Absolutely, and we're going to hear from Coach Ben Rubior now with the Atlas, so we're going to add him. Talk about picking Brian Costabile with that second overall pick. Hey, Coach, can you hear us?
I can. Sorry, couldn't hear you first.
All good. First off, congrats on a great draft. We're happy to talk to you today, and let's talk first with this Brian Costabile pick. He was there for you at 2. You probably expected that. Talk about his game that makes him a perfect fit for the Atlas.
Yeah, being a first-year coach, I've watched a lot of film, and I feel like a very important aspect is just how you play in between the 2 arcs. It's controlling that area of the field, and certainly I think having really athletic guys is a huge help. So my feeling was, Brian, I thought, was one of the best athletes in the draft. He obviously had a great college career, ACC Offensive Player of the Year last year. I think he brings an added element of being able to hit 2-point shots. And he's a guy that I think, will probably get a short stick to start. And I think he's dangerous. I don't think he's had that in a very, very long time. So he's a guy that I think can do a lot all over the field, extremely athletic, and a guy that I hope will put a lot of pressure on other teams as we play him.
No, absolutely. And then another selection you had on the defensive side of the ball was Aiden Hines with the 10th pick. Talk about, Yale's Aiden Hines and, adding him to this defense, kind of led by Tucker Durkin. You added Craig Chick in the, expansion or in the entry draft as well. Talk to me about these pieces on defense that you're building at the Atlas.
Yeah, what I really like about Aiden is he's a guy that came in as an LSM to college, moved down to close defense. Early in his career was kind of their number one cover guy at Yale, and then transitioned to a role where, by the end, I thought he was kind of the quarterback down there. He was a guy that was coordinating everything they were doing defensively. I think off ball, he has just a great presence. And when I kind of look at it, he's a guy that just has versatility. He can play down low. He can play up top. He's got a great stick. He can play the ball or off ball. And this is a guy that was a 3-sport standout high school athlete. This is a very, very good athlete, and a kid that I think, like is emphasized kind of across this league, can do a number of different things for us.
No, absolutely, and we're excited to see the Atlas take the field. One more question too. A big piece that you acquired in the entry draft is Rob Pennell. Talk to us a little bit about how he's already kind of stepped in. How has he kind of stepped up in a leadership role since joining this team?
For me, what stood out is we have a team text chain, and I know these guys kind of shoot out different workouts that they do. This is a guy that I think first and foremost kind of leads by example. He's not the loudest guy in the room, but he is a guy that I think every day puts in the work to be one of the best players in the world. And I think he's going to give us an element of, really being able to put some pressure on the defense from behind the cage. And not that that's the only thing that he can do. I think, he's been a world-class player here for a very, very long time. And I think as I kind of looked at the offense specifically, I felt like a duo of him and Law, two guys that can both play X, but that I think have complementary skill sets. I think Law is one of the best off-ball movers in the game. I think Rob Pennell is one of the best with the ball and a stick. And not that I'm limiting them to those two roles, but I think they're really going to complement each other and be a huge help to our Bulls team.
No, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you coming on. We're looking forward to talking to you in full tomorrow, and then dropping that podcast episode a little bit next week. But we appreciate you coming on tonight and breaking down the draft for us.
Great. Thank you. Great work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And best of luck this summer.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya. All right, so that was Coach Rubior. He's his first time as a head coach. He has a very experienced Atlas team that, definitely underperformed last year. I think we can expect them to be more competitive this season. They kind of came on a little bit stronger later in the season, but definitely excited to talk to him a little bit more. Waiting to hear if we can get Coach Sudan on. We'll wait a few more minutes, and if not, we'll end it there. But one final time, I guess, guys, what were your thoughts with this draft? Any other parting thoughts?
I would just want to point out that the question has been what happened with Nick Mellon. Why wasn't Nick Mellon drafted? Brent Axe, who is a Syracuse guy, or Syracuse.com, ESPN Syracuse, on Twitter tonight says, had a birdie tell me that Nick Mellon wouldn't get picked in the PLL draft. Still surprised he didn't. Injury is part of it, but there are some doubts he can guard high-level guys. We'll get his shot to prove it in MLL Lacrosse.
Wow.
So, and then Chris Yastrzemski, of course, points out as well, all the defensemen drafted, and there were quite a few drafted tonight, are listed at 6 feet or higher. Nick Mellon is listed at 5'9". So there might be some questions there among PLL coaches about his size and his ability to cover. I personally, I am not a PLL coach, and I don't profess to know more about the sport than they do. But I think Nick Mellon has covered plenty of high-level guys in his time at Syracuse. I know the injury concerns I think is real. He's had some injuries there, and maybe you're worried about durability. But it still is surprising to me that coaches maybe did the work and did the research on him and came to the conclusion that he can't guard high-level guys.
Yeah, no, and we don't know what necessarily what their mindset is, and passing on a guy like Mellon. He's going to get a shot though with the Cannons this summer if he decides to sign with them. But what do you think, Adam?
Yeah. One thing that I got out of, specifically out of these coaches conversations wasn't necessarily about the players that were drafted tonight, but the players that were already rosters that are kind of second guessed. A guy like out of Notre Dame, a guy like Brad Smith out of BYU, sounds like are going to be pivotal parts of those in particular that Whipson Wood squads going into next season. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces that we don't know about at this time. Coach Staggs talked about that short stick Dean Mitty situation. So these coaches are not only planning for this coming season, but a guy like Coach Towers planning for the future if Jeff Teat doesn't does end up going back to college. So the coaches took a couple different avenues, but I think players that we might have second guessed going into this draft who are currently on rosters, we might now see big things come July for them.
Yeah, and there's some questions that get raised by the Jeff Teat pick, right? Like we knew coming in the like we said, sort of the rules were the guys who can get drafted are the guys who aren't going back to school, and so we don't know yet what Jeff's Teat plan is. But in part of that announcement, I'm not sure if the PLL made it clear what would happen with guys' rights if they did get drafted, because they hadn't said one way or another yet. But then they go back to school, and then it kind of makes it all right. Well, then why not take a Tanner Cook from UNC, a big bodied midi who's athletic, who's out of the Hill Academy, a guy like that. Why not take a Jack Keelty from Notre Dame? Some of these guys haven't definitively said, as far as I've seen anyway, what their plan is. So can we speculate on them as well? I'm surprised maybe if Coach Towers was going to do it with Jeff Teat, I'm surprised we didn't maybe see it with some other guys who haven't made it all that clear yet what their plan is.
Yep, my thoughts exactly.
It's very interesting for sure. It doesn't look like we're going to get Coach Sudan. So with that, we'll wrap up the show. But, Dan, Adam, again, appreciate you guys jumping on. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys, if you didn't catch us, during the draft, you caught some of those coaches' interviews. We're going to have more. We're going to definitely talk to Coach Sudan at some point and have that for you. We're talking to Coach Copeland tomorrow as well. So we're hoping to, get as much as we can for you guys. That'll be posted on the podcast. And if you missed any of this, that'll be posted on the podcast on YouTube. And then the coaches' interviews will be posted on the podcast as well. But with that, we really appreciate you guys watching and tuning in. We appreciate these coaches coming on, and we're looking forward to the PLL this summer. But with that, I'll leave us with that. And thank you guys for watching another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk.